So,
like
yes,
Yeah.
but he will.
Superpower, not needing to read glasses
Me
or
too.
glasses, and I was really sad to lose that.
Zero superpowers.
I know, no more superpowers.
Yeah. What's about that?
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. All right, first up on the agenda this evening, citizens communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comments on items relevant to the Planning and Zoning Commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not on the published agenda will only be heard by the Commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the Commission. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. Is there anyone present wishing to address the Commission this evening? Seeing as none, we will move on to item 3 on the agenda. Item 3A, so this is Trista, who will be speaking to us this evening about Board, Commission, and Committee policy and procedure. And real quick, I just wanted to welcome our 2 new commissioners joining us for the first time this evening as well. Chelsea Burkett and Teresa Atkinson. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Trista. I know for most of you this will be far from the first time you've heard this presentation, so I won't belabor the point, but always a good reminder, especially for our new members. Just going to crash everything. So a brief overview of the city itself. Home Rule City, council manager form of government. Think of the city manager as the CEO, council as the board, if that helps you. Council determines policies, city manager makes it happen. What is your role in this? City council can create boards and commissions however they see fit. This is one of our perhaps longest functioning board. You are in the charter. So the function is set on how they are established. So each board operates a little bit differently, as many of you know. So I'm going to cover the code of conduct very quickly. This was a resolution that you've all received, I'm sure, multiple times. This was adopted by City Council. It is for elected and appointed officials, so it is their own code of conduct as well as yours. In general, right, it's a fairly straightforward code of conduct. I'm going to go through each piece. There are some highlights I'm going to hit that may be a little bit more, I don't want to say confusing, a little more intricate than some others. So in general, act in public interest, comply with the law. I think that's obvious. Conduct of members, be present, be here, be on time, participate. Ask questions if you have questions. Respect the process. That is really the process of staff with the board and the process that's set up. Some of it is for legal purposes, especially for you all. If you have questions about the process, please don't hesitate to ask staff. They are more than happy to answer. Use of electronics, be respectful. Conduct business in open. I'm going to talk about Open Meetings Act a little bit more in detail. Decisions based on merit, I want to hit the decisions made at this board should be based on the merits of the application and the merit of the request, not whether or not you know someone or like someone or don't like someone. It's about what's in front of you. Share relevant information. If you hear or see something outside of this meeting that you think is relevant to the board discussion, share that with staff so they can share it with the rest of you. You don't want to hold any information that might be useful. Conduct of public meetings. Again, this is going to hit more in the Open Meetings Act I'm going to cover. Conflict of interest. This is where I sit quietly and let you read. It's a very specific legal requirement, conflict of interest. It is financially related. This is Chapter 171 of the Local Government Code. If you have questions, you can ask me. I will refer you to the Local Government Code. If you do have a conflict of interest as identified, there is a form that you need to fill out beforehand, and you will not be able to participate in any discussion or action on that specific item only. You will need to leave the dais and then come back when that item is over. Gifts and favors, I want to highlight, sometimes vendors will provide gifts. The general rule is under $50. We always want to be careful about how it looks. So just because something has less than a $50 value, if it has the appearance of perhaps seeking favor, it's always easier to just say no. Confidential information is confidential. If it's stated in an open meeting like this, you can assume it's not confidential. If it's stated within an executive session, which we'll talk about in a second, assume it's confidential. Don't share it. If you're not sure if something's confidential, please ask staff and we will tell you. Use of public resources, advocacy. So the use of public resources is basically stating you are a member of this commission and we thank you for your service. You don't get special extra favors that other people from the public may or may not have. So just be mindful of that. You are still, in all other aspects, a resident of the city and have the same sort of use of those public resources that everyone else has. And then the representation of public interest is going to be another one that I'm going to refer you to read the part in the resolution about it. It gets a little bit more finicky about appearing before this body or council for a private interest. If you ever think you might need to do that, read that section, come talk to me. We can talk about it. And then advocacy is just that when you're representing the official positions of the board, you can do so if you have been designated to do so. One person doesn't speak for the board, obviously, that's why there's 7 of you. It's because you are all the board. So if there's an action that's taken, that is the board sharing their opinion. If you do speak individually, just make it known that you are speaking for yourself and not for the board and not for the city. Again, unless you have been specifically designated. Policy role, this is the structure as defined by the charter, by ordinances, by resolutions, whatever is making up the board rules, follow those rules, like this code of conduct. This independence of boards and commissions, this is specifically stating that council can't come in and tell you what to do at the end of the day. You are here to provide them with recommendations, to bring things forward from throughout the process, but they can't come and say, I need you to pass this. Positive constructive environment, personal political advocacy. This one I'm going to hit a little bit. So when endorsing or opposing a City of Pflugerville ballot initiative or candidate, you do so as an individual person, not as a member of the board. So in anything that you do that says, I support or I don't support this, make sure that you are doing it without a comma behind your name that says P&Z Commissioner. Social media, it is what it is. The line between city-appointed official and private citizen can blur sometimes, so be cautious and be aware. Again, if you have questions, I'm happy to talk to you about it. It's, I think, pretty clear in most situations. If you're not sure, again, just ask. News media inquiries, please redirect them to our communications department. We have a fabulous communications department. They are trained for this. They do this all day, every day. If someone comes to ask you a question about it, direct them over there. They've got all the answers. Again, unless communications has designated you as, hey, we would love for you to talk to this news source. Again, if you want to talk to them for yourself, feel free to do so, but you are doing so for yourself and not for the city. Any questions on Code of Conduct? Awesome. Okay. Open Meetings Act. Hopefully you all have seen the wonderful hour-long training from the Attorney General about open meetings. At the end of the day, what this is saying is that you are serving a public entity, you are the public, therefore it should be in public. Everything we do should be in public. All votes and decisions are in public. What constitutes a meeting? It's where there's 4 or more of you and you're talking about business. That's a meeting. Which is why if there are 4 or more of you in one spot in one time and I see you huddled around talking about something, I'm going to walk up and say, well, there's a quorum, and ask you to disperse. Even if it's not a formal setting, if you're sitting outside in the parking lot talking about planning and zoning and there's 4 of you, you're going to have to disperse. So if you count to 3 and someone shows up, be the person to leave. We conduct all of our meetings, all boards, in the Open Meetings Act. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, there are some very specific definitions in there about what constitutes a governmental body. In the interest of transparency, all of our boards and commissions are considered governmental bodies. Notices are required. These are our agendas. They are required to have date, time, place, and subject. So if I accidentally don't post an agenda and it's after that 72 hours, that meeting has to get pushed so that it's 72 hours. The only exceptions are true emergency exceptions, and those are very specifically defined. The items on that agenda have to be specific enough so that someone walking in and reading the agenda knows what they're going to talk about. It also means that you can't divert an item to talk about a different subject unless it is directly related. This is called an open session. We are in open, anyone can walk in, anyone can walk out. You're present here, minutes are going to be taken and recorded. There's also the executive session. This is where there are certain legal requirements that there's going to be confidential conversations. They'll be talking about negotiations, talk about lawsuits. All that can happen behind closed doors. It could be in that room back there. However, any final action has to happen back out in this room. There doesn't have to be discussion about what it is, but they have to take any action in public. And I'm going to specify. There doesn't have to be a specification of the discussion that happened, but the action does still have to be clear. Social functions unrelated to public business aren't considered meetings. Attendance at a workshop, if there's some conference for multiple days that quorum of you are going to, that's not considered a meeting. Formal action can't be taken, and discussion has to be just incidental. Again, it's going to be if there's 4 of you in one spot talking about business. Still, even in those situations, just be the one to wander off into a different circle. Questions about open meetings?
We're in a situation where as much as the public are here and we've closed the public hearing and we'd like to discuss internally, does that have to happen out here? Or would it be possible to say, okay, we're going to do executive session, go back there, talk about it, come back out, and then vote?
Only if there is a specific legal reason for it to happen. I thought I listed some of the specificities of when an executive session can happen. Consultation with attorney, real property discussions, that's usually in purchase or sale of property. Economic development, personnel matters, and security issues. So it's very limited. If there's a specific question for the attorney, that attorney will say, sure, we can go back. And if it's not a legal question, they'll say, come back out. So maybe it depends on what that discussion includes. Anything else? Okay. My last piece is Public Information Act, just as a reminder to those of you and to let you know as well. You are, for all intents, an agent of the city of Pflugerville now, and so any records that you keep are government records. What this means is a couple of things. If it has to do with your business as a commissioner, that's government record. Whether or not you have it on your cell phone or your personal laptop or whatever, that's still government record. I will not come and take your things. I don't want that. If there's an open records request for discussion, your best bet, and I should really change this over to tell you the solution before I tell you the problem. As long as staff is included on emails, you will never have to worry about it because then it is in our system. We have it. It's our record. If we ever need it, we can get it. We don't have to come to you. If you received any documents from us, we have those documents. You don't need to worry about it. Any emails you send to staff or receive from staff, we got them, no problem. If you are receiving emails from an outside person about board business, you can forward that over to staff, or you can, in response, copy staff. Just keep staff included, and then you never have to hear from me about open records requests. The time that you might have to hear from me is if we receive one that asks for communication about an item. I will come to you and I'll send you an email, and I'll say, hey, do you have any records of communication about this thing that won't be within the city staff email? If you say, yes, actually, we texted, or I have this email on my personal address, I'll say, great, forward that to me, send me a screenshot, whatever. And that's all I need. Which also means avoid texting about city business. Send an email. It's easier to find when you're trying to reference things anyway, and then you never have to think about it again. If you want to learn about records management, we do have a retention policy under the Texas State Library and Archives Commission that tells you how long you have to keep everything. If you want to talk about records, give me a call. I'll talk to you. Email's not a record series. If you're like, oh, how long do I have to keep emails? It depends. What's in the email? What attachments are in the email? That's what matters. But again, keep city staff included, and you never have to think about it. This is my contact information. I'm very easy to find. Do you guys have any questions for me? Awesome. Thank you.
Write down questions or just thoughts of like the book, is that an issue with?
So I'm going to say in general, no. In general, that would be sort of working notes for yourself. If it starts to become more on like a report level type of detail, then we would want to consider keeping it and eventually turning it into staff when you're done with it. But if it's just little notes of reminders, then no, that'll just be, it's considered transitory information. It's a good question. Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. All right, next up on our agenda, discuss and consider, pardon me, item 4A. So we will be discussing and considering action to appoint a chair and vice chair.
Well, seeing how great Chair Kaufman did last year, I'd like to nominate him again as chair this year, if you accept.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be happy to continue.
Yeah.
Need to take a vote?
Yeah, you got a
Yep.
first and a second.
All right, awesome. So we've got a motion to consider appointing me, Commissioner Kaufman, as, to continue on as chair for this year. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you all, appreciate it. All right, and vice chair.
Nick, are you still good with it?
I'd be happy to.
You rocked it when you served as chair,
The one time.
so I would like to nominate Nick Hudson
Aye, second.
as vice chair.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See none? Thank you for your continued service.
Thank you.
All right, now. we can move forward.
It's consent.
Consent.
We do actually have to do the consent agenda. I
Get your steps in.
know. Change the, we changed the order of this. All right, item 5, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda may be pulled and moved to the regular agenda if any commissioner would like to have discussion on any particular item. We have several, 3 this evening. So item 5A, which is approving a final plat for Lakeside Meadows phases 6 and 7. We have item 5B, approving a final plat for Gindon subdivision. And item 5C, approving a final plat for Impact Way 4. Is there any commissioner wishing to pull an item from the consent agenda? All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposed, consent agenda passes. Thank you. All right, now we have item 7. We have a public hearing this evening. So the commission welcomes comment on the following items. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. All right. Jeremy, our principal planner, will be presenting item 7A to consider amending the city code of ordinances for the future land use map.
Good evening, Chair and Commission, and thank you for being here tonight, and welcome to our 2 new members. This is a comprehensive plan amendment. This is something that we don't do on a regular basis. We typically approve a comprehensive plan, and that it establishes what our vision is of the community, but there are certain times where we find that there are discrepancies or inconsistencies or something like that that needs to be addressed, and so an applicant can pursue a comprehensive plan amendment. In this instance, this is actually a city-initiated comprehensive plan amendment. So we're looking at the future land use map. The future land use map is in subchapter 3 of our comprehensive plan, and that helps to identify what the different land use categories are for the city and within our realm. It's typically kind of a broad brush stroke kind of painting, if you will, of what the different land use categories would be throughout But there are times where we have to get into the specific details and zoom in onto properties, and sometimes that's where we find those inconsistencies. And so sometimes that can be a mapping error that we want to come back and revisit. This happens to be a situation where we looked at some properties and we found some inconsistencies with what the land use categories are and with what the current zonings are. And so bringing forward tonight proposed amendments to address some things. It's approximately 18 properties inside of our downtown core area, as well as the transitional compatibility zone. The downtown district overlay, just to give you kind of a bigger picture of what this is, on the left-hand side of the screen represents what that area is. Inside of that area, we have like 5 different sub-areas, if you will. The western extent becomes like 10th Street. And our eastern extent becomes 685. The downtown east properties inside the Pfluger Tract, as an example. On the right-hand side of the screen is our downtown core, and also shows the transitional compatibility zones. That's the hatching. Those are the areas that we're talking about tonight. And so specifically, it's the areas that are circled in red. So as I mentioned, we were looking at the future land use map, and we found on the left-hand side of the screen shows the future land use map, and we saw that there were some inconsistencies when you compare to the zoning that's on the right-hand side. The properties that we're talking about are outlined in black. You can see that they have that yellow color. On the future land use map, we also have the pink that's in the downtown core area. That's our mixed-use neighborhood classification or category. And then the blue is the institutional category. The right-hand side then shows our zoning map. So trying to put us side by side is kind of a lot of colors for you, but to show what we were looking at and where we saw those inconsistencies. The transitional zone, I should back up and talk about that for a minute. So that transitional compatibility zone is an area that we envision as that true transition, right? To go from where the more vibrant mixed-use things might be inside of our downtown core to where the neighborhoods are. And so we identify that there could be an area, or those are the areas that we could see some transitioning happening from, say, a single-family home that would transition into an office or something like that. That would be more compatible with the neighborhood, but it wouldn't maybe be as intense as what we might find in the downtown core. So some of those properties are shown on the zoning map. Actually, I'll zoom in just a minute onto those. The future land use categories that we're talking about today, everything that was in the yellow on that left-hand side is the suburban residential. That was intended for 100% single-family types of development. That's what we see as our single-family neighborhoods. The non-residential would be considered when you were talking about some type of civic or amenity center or something like that. The mixed-use neighborhood is intended to create the vibrancy that we would anticipate. Mixed use doesn't mean that it has to be vertical mixed use, meaning stacked on top of one another, but it could be a horizontal mixed use. Mixed use does not remove single family from its equation. Instead, it looks at, you could do small lot single family, which is what we find inside of these areas. There could also be transition to townhomes or duplexes or triplexes, that type of that makes compatibility. It also allows for the opportunity to do some type of office or retail or neighborhood commercial type of developments there. And that type of vibrancy is what is envisioned inside of the downtown area. That's what's established in our downtown vision plans. That's pulled into our Unified Development Code and all of its development requirements. So that's why we're looking at making that adjustment for those areas. The institutional is another, it's one lot that's proposed to be moved into that category, and it's basically because the property itself was owned and controlled by the church property. It's the property on the left-hand side that's that light blue color. The rest of the property, well, the property itself and the adjacent property is all zoned office today. And so this would, the future land use map shows it as suburban residential. This is just to give it that conforming land use category. On the left-hand side of the screen, what's highlighted in pink are those properties that are inside of the transitional compatibility zone that's just north of Pecan Street on the west side of First Street. On the zoning map, you can see on the right side, there's yellow and green on that west side. It's those properties that are highlighted in the blue. Two of those properties are currently zoned office. One is used as an office. The other one was zoned for office and had the intent of moving forward. Today, they don't have an office in there, but that's afforded to them. That's an area that we've identified inside of the Unified Development Code in our downtown district to be that transitional piece. And so putting a mixed-use neighborhood into that section helps to establish that transition and to put that compatibility there. Compatibility and conformity. On the right-hand side, you can see the pink. That's where the east side of First Street is currently zoned retail, is what's reflected on the right-hand side of the screen. That again, the proposal is to change that from the suburban residential to the mixed-use neighborhood to be able to provide that conforming classification. The last parcel that's on this screen is down at the southwest corner of Main Street and Railroad. Today it's a 2-story building. It has the taco house, the tattoo shop, and then there's an office that's upstairs. That would be to take that from suburban residential to the mixed-use neighborhood. Today it's zoned general business 1. The last area that we're looking at, or that we looked at, found was on just south of Pecan Street between 2nd and 3rd Street. There was just a little 3 parcels there on the north side of Hall Street. 2 of them are zoned for the non-residential. There's an office and then the retail zoned property, and then 1 suburban residential property that's adjacent to it. Again, it's in that compatibility zone that's identified to potentially transition, and so it's just that one little block that we were looking at making the adjustment to, not anything else on Hall Street. When we look at the rest of the comprehensive plan, there's another chapter in there that talks about neighborhood districts. And so those neighborhood districts kind of take the city and break it off into different parts. This one is the central district, and some of the aspirational actions that are inside of that. We're really looking at creating vibrancy, increasing the walkability, and creating that pedestrian atmosphere. Creating the communications with the neighborhoods so that we're having compatible elements. And looking for ways to increase the aesthetics. Making these adjustments doesn't change anything in this. What this will do is continue to retain these aspirational actions and be more consistent, again, with what the downtown area was intended to be and what it continues to be zoned today. The proposed request does not make any requirements to change anybody's land use that's on that property today. It does not change any of the zoning on it. Instead, what it does is it provides consistency of a land use category that was anticipated to be on those properties. So the transitional corridor, just those different small pieces that we were looking at, is intended to transition. And so we want to make sure that that is consistent. The properties that are currently zoned for the non-residential, we need to make sure that that's also consistent there. Staff does recommend approval. This is anticipated to go to City Council at the end of the month. Be happy to answer any questions for you from you.
Have the owners of these properties been notified, or have they provided any feedback?
We sent a notice to the property owners that were specifically affected by this, and we have not received any other feedback off of that. I will say that one of the, when we were evaluating this, there is a zoning case that was proposed to come in. And while we're doing that evaluation, we're looking at the future land use plan and looking at the comprehensive plan, seeing does it fit? And when you find that there's a property that isn't consistent, and then you start seeing the other ones that aren't there, that's where we felt like it was important for us to bring this forward.
So that case is pending or coming through
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't take the action, would it restrict any of the actual current uses, or would they be grandfathered in?
So it just creates a conflict,
Okay.
right? It's a situation where we've identified in our Unified Development Code that we want to see these things happening. We've said that in our downtown districts, and then we're telling them, nope, just kidding, you can only be 100% single family. And so that's the rub there. And this was an inadvertent kind of mapping item, so.
What I'm seeing is this is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, bringing it more into alignment with what the property owners are currently doing.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, or it's zoned
the
for
church
that.
is not single-family suburban,
Correct.
and so we're going to change that label.
Right.
There- Yeah, I read the report and I was like, slam dunk.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I was like, oh, that's easy. I mean, it's not gonna change their insurance requirements because they're still staying single family, so that doesn't affect them.
Yeah, their zoning is still the same, and
Same,
all of that
yeah.
right
Yeah,
now.
zoning is still the
It's not,
same.
it's only until like they sell it or they transfer it to mixed use
It-
themselves.
It would have to go through, so if a property is zoned single family suburban right now, through this change does not automatically give them zoning. It doesn't allow them to change their use without coming through the process.
Correct.
So this is just an identification that this is what our plans were. And what we intended our plan to be, our master plan, is to coincide with what our other plans are.
Essentially, if they do bring a zoning or change case, they would have this box checked that they conform to the.
They conform to,
Which is
right,
typically
what the
in the
land use plan
report.
was. But then each case is reviewed on a case-by-case basis from zoning standpoint, so.
There was one off of Pecan that was all general GB1, and then there was just a retail. Unless it was in this spreadsheet somewhere. Where is it? That's what I saw. Yeah, there it is. So GB1 R GB1. Why is it just retail and not GB1?
For that particular one, I'd have to go back and search. I don't
Because
recall.
it seems, because that's Pecan and it's pretty busy, so wouldn't most of those be GB1? That was my question.
Yeah, and at the time, it may have been, I'd have to do history
Yeah,
research on
that's
that one. Yeah, I'm not
That
sure.
parcel's not part of this, right?
No,
No.
no, it's not. But I saw it and I was like, oh, well, that's
Yeah.
a change too. Okay.
But that one, when you look, do the side by side, the future land use plan shows that all to be mixed use neighborhood.
Okay. I mean, it
That's
probably
what that-
doesn't matter. I mean, GB1 allows for different stuff. Retail is fine.
Is there reason to believe we should go and look at any of the other, especially the overlay districts where there's more activity generally, to do some additional auditing and corrections beyond these suggestions?
So we looked at the downtown district,
Okay.
and I think from the core standpoint, I think we've captured all of those properties.
Okay.
I don't believe that there was anything else. Like the South Downtown area, we did not go and investigate those pieces. The Fluker Tract is different property. Western Gateway, I believe, is all correct.
We'll be seeing all of those anyway.
Yeah, it
Those
was.
are all in development.
Right.
It was this zoom in microcosm kind of thing where we identified these pieces, and so that wasn't what we actually meant.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of areas where block by block there's substantive changes like this.
Right.
Typically.
And a lot of times when we're looking at creating a land use plan, we're way up here, right? We're at 100,000-foot level, looking at what is this big city going to be like, and how do we see this working out? And it's more of a broad brush stroke. But when we do start to zoom in onto properties and looking at what did we say, and you can see a parcel by parcel, that's when we start to question it and think, well, we can make this clean.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all being proactive about discovering the discrepancies and then bringing this forward so that we can likely get it resolved.
Do we need public comment before we make a motion?
Yes, we are in a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll request a motion to close the public
Move to
hearing.
close public comment?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. All right, motion passes. Unless there's any further conversation or questions for Jeremy, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, and that concludes our meeting. So I will adjourn us here at 7:35. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, you.